whatever it is. If this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead. Phantasm.
Welcome back. I'm Pat, that Halloween movie collector, and I'm back with another That 70's movie review. This week, a favorite of mine from my early VHS days from the 1980s, Phantasm from 1979. Written, directed, produced, pretty much everything by Don Coscarelli. This, from what I read, doing some research on it, I know the movie so well, that's why I wanted to do a review on it, and I have fond memories of seeing it for the first time with some of my friends and my cousins when we rented it from the video store back in the early 80s. And I didn't realize it was based on nightmares he had as a child. And from what you can see, he actually dreamt about the silver ball and everything, a sphere, like a silver sphere. So I didn't know that, so I thought that was awfully cool. So let's dive into this. Classic horror movie, spawned, I believe, 4 sequels. Part 2 was really good. The other ones were so but Part 2 was really good. Maybe down the road I'll do a review of Part 2. Basically tells the story of Mikey, he's with his brother, Jody. They lost their parents years before. They have a close-knit group of friends. One is name is Tommy, and the other is Reggie. Everybody remembers Reggie Bannister. He's got that ponytail. He drives the ice cream truck, plays the guitar. Basically, it's a story of basically 2 brothers. So Mike is the younger brother. Now, he's lost his brother, Jody, in a car wreck. So basically what takes place through this whole, spoiler alert, takes place from what they want you to believe is that this whole movie is basically a dream. It's a nightmare. Because he does wake up at the end. But it tells the story how their friend Tommy, who is seen in the beginning at this Morningside mortuary having sex in the cemetery, creepy, with a pretty girl who turns out to be what is being called the Tall Man, played by the late great Angus Scrimm, who played this part perfectly. I never got a chance to meet him at any of the cons, but he looks so menacing, so creepy, but from what I understood, he was like a teddy bear, like the nicest person you can ever meet or talk to. So basically, he kills him, and then flashes to them at Tommy's funeral because they are, why I don't understand, because she stabs him in the chest several times. Who were these bumbling cops that couldn't figure out that this was a murder? But it's claimed to be a suicide. Meanwhile, you got to remember this is a dream. So, of course, they didn't want Mike there because he would be too upset because they're such a close-knit group of friends. So, of course, every time Jody says, "Don't follow me," Mike follows him. So he's there in the distance in the cemetery with binoculars, and he's watching the funeral play out. Then he sees the Tall Man at the very end loading up the coffin with Tommy's body in it, and just picks up the coffin like it's nothing and just throws it in the back of the hearse, which is not an easy task because coffins, even without a body in them, are heavy as hell. I've never been a pallbearer, but I just know this, that they're very, very heavy. So he goes back and of course he tells Jody. Jody's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he just thinks, he's just delusional. He's just upset about what happened to Tommy. So Mike's convinced there's some weird shit going on. Apparently he has these group of real cute girls that are friends who have his grandmother who's like a psychic. So he goes to them and he says, I want to talk to the grandmother and ask about Morningside because maybe she can figure out there's some weird shit going on there. And puts this little box there where his hand gets stuck in it. And it's almost like a mind game, like a trust game. So basically, get some information out of that. So what happens is now Jody, of course, he's going to go out. He goes to this bar, picks up this girl who turns out to be the girl that killed Tommy. And of course, you got Mike following behind and he's watching, they're fooling around. And then he starts to see these little creatures run behind the tombstones, almost like Ewoks. And they make these weird sounds. And he's like, "What the hell is that?" So he gets chased by one of them as he's running through the cemetery. Jody does see him, and he's like, "Oh, you screwed this all up for me. What are you doing?" And he gives him the key to the car to drive away. And he's like telling him about all the weird shit that's going on. Then when Jody goes back, the girl is gone. So effectively, he saved his life because we know the girl. You always see the transformation scene where after she kills, she turns into the Tall Man. So basically, saved Jody's life, in theory, in his dream. The next night, Mike decides to investigate it for himself. So he goes to the Morningside mortuary and breaks in the mausoleum. And in there, he sees the caretaker right as he's seeing the caretaker. This is where you first see the sphere, the silver ball, and it's flying through there. And what this ball does is when it hits you in the head, it sticks right into your head, drills into your head, and it drains the blood out. One of the coolest concepts in a horror movie. So, shout out to Don Coscarelli. Love the sphere. So he dies. And of course he gets chased by Angus Scrimm, the tall man. And as he's chased, he runs into a room. He runs and slams a door on the tall man's fingers, and one of them actually comes off, and he saves it. So Jody finally gets home. He's giving him shit, saying, you got to stop following me. What's wrong with you? And of course, he's telling him all the shit that he saw. And of course, nobody ever believes anybody in horror movies. So, but thankfully, Mike has proof. He has that finger. So he shows the finger and he says, look, I have it here. It's in a box. So he sees it and he's like, all right, I believe you. He's like, what are we going to do about this? And he's like, we'll have to figure something out. So Jody thinks, okay, I'll go and do some investigating myself. Leaves him at home with the finger. And before anything happens, the finger transforms into this amazingly weird-looking giant bug. And they're trying to stop it, and it's just throwing them all over the place. They get it caught in, I think it was a towel, and it's just all over the place. And then who walks in to see this but Reggie? And he's like, what the hell's going on? And it was that stupid fly. They actually put it down in a trash compactor in the sink. And then it came back up, and that's when Reggie saw it. It was flying over the place, and then he learns the whole story about what happened. So, like I said, Jody does go to the mausoleum to investigate, see what's going on. And he's like... Then Jody's attacked by one of the little creatures, and fortunately, true to form, Mike was following him, and Mike was there to save him and get the hell out of there. What's going on? And he's like chased by a hearse that was being driven by one of these little Ewok-looking creatures, one of the little dwarves. And of course, Mike hangs out of the car with a shotgun and shoots the hood off of the hearse, causing it to crash into a tree. And when it crashes, they go to look inside and they see what's there. It's a little dwarf with the face of their friend Tommy. So obviously, he's been reanimated as one of these little dwarfs. So they take Mike, drop him off at a friend's place. I think there's an antique shop with some friends that they are saying, just go stay here with them. Don't leave. And we'll go figure this out. Me, Reggie, and myself. But while at the antique place, he sees a picture of Morningside Cemetery and a picture of the tall man from I forget what the date, like 1800s, like over 100 years. Like he should have been long dead. So now he knows there's something seriously going wrong because this guy should have been dead a long time ago. Why is he still alive? So he convinces the girls, so let's go investigate it. And on the way there, they get attacked by the little dwarves, and they take the girls away, but Mike manages to escape. They do see Reggie's ice cream truck there, and they're just assuming maybe that he was dead too. It's like they must have got to him too, so he was concerned about that. Mike makes it back to the house, tells Jody everything. Jody wants to go without him to protect him, so he grabs him, throws him into his room, locks him in his room, and Mike comes up with a little, has a shotgun, attaches it to a hammer, and manages to get the door open. But just as Mike is ready to run out the door, who's on the other side of the door? But the tall man grabs him, throws him in the hearse, and drives away with him, taking him to Morningside. And while he's in the back of the hearse, he has his gun, so he ends up shooting out the back window and shooting the back tire. It crashes, so he jumps out, and it causes it to crash and blow up. So he makes it to Morningside. He's wandering around inside Morningside, and all of a sudden he hears that sphere. And as it's just before it comes towards him, who jumps out and saves him? But Jody jumps out with a shotgun and shoots it and saves him. And then as they're walking around and investigating, they do come across Reggie. And Reggie said, he saw the girls. They were scared to shit, but he was able to manage to let them out. So obviously the girls survived. So they come to this room. They hear this noise. And they find, basically, it's a portal. It's like these two metal rods that stick up. And they make note of, since he's a guitar player, I'm a guitar player, a tuning fork. So you see Jody using, Reggie using a tuning fork earlier on when they're playing guitar together. So, and he's looking at that, thinking it's sort of like a magnetized thing or some type of a way to communicate, I guess, because it's very confusing, that whole part there. So basically, they while they're in there, it's like a power outage. Like the whole place, the whole power goes down. See, when the power comes back up, Mike and Jody are outside. Reggie's still inside, so Reggie goes up to the two pieces of metal sticking up, sort of thinking he could put his hands on them and stop them like a tuning fork. So what it does is start sucking everything in to this like portal. Now, they did look in the portal. Mike did look into the portal, and what he saw was all these little dwarves like being used as slaves. So obviously this is like the Toll Man's planet or where the hell he's from, and basically just takes the bodies of the dead people that he brings into the mausoleum, reanimates them into these little dwarves, and uses them as slaves in his planet. That's the long and tall of it. But as this vacuum is sucking everything through, they have these big containers with dwarves in them, and they just keep sucking them through. Reggie was already outside, but unfortunately he ran into the girl, which was Angus Scrimm, and he gets stabbed. Presumably he dies. But Mike and Jody do get home, and they hatch this plan to sort of get him into. They have a mine shaft nearby that they're going to try to lure him into the mine shaft and just bury him alive. Yeah, throw a bunch of boulders and rocks and shit on top of him so he can't get out. So, of course, true to form, go back, and the Tall Man shows up to go after Mike, and he manages to chase Mike, and then he falls into that well, and then the mine, rather. And you see all these rocks come down, and look up, and you see Jody, because Jody pushed all these rocks and boulders. So presumably you're thinking, all right, he's trapped, he's dead, he's gone. And then what happens is you see Mike wake up, and there's Mike, he's laying, and Reggie's next to him. So basically, it's presumed this is all a dream. He's like, he just had a dream. You're still upset about Jody dying in a car wreck, so it's still fresh in his mind. So Reggie's like, well, why don't you just get our shit and we'll just go on a road trip, just get the fuck out of here, and we'll just clear our minds and he's like, sure. So what happens is you see him go into his room and to pack. And the Tall Man appears in the mirror, boy, and he reaches through. They reach through and grab him, the creatures, and through the mirror. And you're assuming that. So it's very ambiguous ending because it could be construed several different ways. Like maybe it wasn't a dream, or if it was all a dream, maybe when he went into his room, he laid back down and went to sleep again. And this was the second part of the dream. There's very different ways to interpret it. It's like very surrealistic. But to me, it's a great jump scare because you don't expect it. And, of course, what did it do? It left the door open for a sequel. And it's good graphics in this movie. It was all like local up-and-comer actors, that were just local to the project. So they all did great. Reggie appeared in several other films along with Mike. And Jody even comes back later on in the sequel, in one of the sequels. So it's acted very well for what's there. The script is very well written, and it keeps you interested throughout the whole movie because you're curious to see what happens. And it does have that like nice little jump scare twist ending. But you can interpret it in several different ways. Over the years, like I said, to me, it's either all a dream sequence, or he goes back into the room and falls asleep, or it was all true, and he was just taking a nap, and he woke up, and he was just thinking about other things or along the way. And sometimes dreams are out of order. Sometimes they don't make sense. They're bits and pieces of things that are in your mind. It could have been interpreted as a lot of different things. And lots of dreams don't make sense. As I said, Don Coscarelli said it was inspired by a lot of nightmares he had as a kid. Sometimes nightmares don't make sense. You're in this world, and you wake up and you're like, what the hell was that about? Doesn't make any sense. So very many ways to interpret it. But as a standalone film, this movie it's a classic in the horror community. I mean, it's pretty much sci-fi as well. I mean, yeah, it's got some blood in it, but it's not really, I don't know if you really call it a slash. I mean, yeah, a slasher film because there's knives, because you got the Tall Man stabbing people. I guess so. You can say it's a slasher, but it's also very sci-fi-ish as well. It's got that imagery and surrealistic tone behind it. Just a classic. Just a classic in my book. It's up there with several favorite horror movies from the 70s. And this is one of those movies that if it's on, I watch it all the time. If it's on, you got to sit through it because it's just a really fun movie to watch. If you haven't seen it, Go check it out. So on this, if you guys been following me, I give smiley faces. 1 through 5 is my ranking. So I would give this Phantasm. The first one is my favorite one. 2 is really good. I'll give this 3.5, 3.5 smiley faces, which is pretty darn good. I tend to, a lot of the movies I've been doing are very nostalgic, and this is very nostalgic too. I remember vividly going to the video store and seeing the cover with my cousins and friends, and I miss the early 80s days of going to the video store and looking at all the covers of all the horror movies and us trying to figure out what we're going to watch. And I just remember seeing Phantasm, like, wow, this really looks cool. Let's go rent this. And we just loved it. And speaking of horror movie covers, I'll throw a link up here. Go check out our top 5 VHS horror movie covers we just did with my buddies Joe and Brett on that horror movie podcast. You can check out the link. That was a lot of fun. Let us know what your favorites are, what stands out in your memory from going to the VHS stores. So there you have it. That is this week's That 70's Movie Review. Phantasm. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Well worth the time. You'll be glad you did. But I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. If you watch this channel, it's mostly horror-based, as you can see. So I'm sure you've seen Phantasm. And I've met very few people that didn't like it. It's a fun ride of a movie. So go check it out. So if you get a chance, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Helps people find this channel. Be doing some more reviews coming up. Pick some more horror movies. Looking to delve into some other stuff. I keep saying that, but I always go back to horror because that's my love. But make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps a brother out. Don't cost nothing. Be sure to check out That Horror Movie Podcast on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. when I hang out and we just do a whole 2.5 hour, sometimes 3 hour podcast all about horror and top 5s and collectibles and all fun shit. So hope to see you there. And be sure to just troll around the channel. See if there's other shit that you'd be interested in. And until then, I'll talk to you soon.